Ahmed, good meeting you, and welcome to Prague.
Thank you.
And we know that we would like to take this opportunity to spend with you, knowing it's not very easy and flexible for anyone living in Gaza to travel. So welcome again to Prague.
Thank you, Bassel.
I wanted to ask, we know that you are the person behind the idea of the Great March of Return. Can you tell us a little bit how this idea came around, or how was it born?
Yeah, the story began on 1948. That year, it's the year of the establishment of Israeli state. At the same time, it's the year of Nakba for Palestinians. In that year, after tens of the Israeli massacres, the Israeli forces forced about 750,000 of the Palestinians to leave their homes, and they went to Gaza Strip, to West Bank, to Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and to other countries around the world, and they became refugees. And now there are more than 8 million Palestinian refugees. So Gaza Strip is a very narrow place. It's about 365 square kilometers, and it's one of the highest density places around the world. There are lived now 2.2 million Palestinians. About 67 or 70% of them are refugees. So this makes Gaza Strip in very hard conditions. And from other side, the people in Gaza, Israel imposed against Gaza a blockade since 2007. This blockade, Israel restricted the freedom of the movement for the Palestinians from Gaza, and for the foreign people to come to Gaza. It also restricted the movement of the machines, of the trade. The Palestinians in Gaza cannot export, cannot import, but with Israeli hard conditions. Israel in Gaza Strip banned the Palestinians near the fence, the farmers to farm their lands, and Israel destroyed between 2007 until 2014, it destroyed more than 500 facilities and factories. This means thousands of the workers lost their works. Israel stole the field of the gas in the coastline of Gaza, and it bans the Palestinians to exploit it. If the Palestinians in Gaza, as example, exploited this field of gas, Gaza will be independent economically. So those also in the medical sector, Israel the patients in Gaza cannot go to hospitals in the rest of the Palestinian territories, and if one of them the doctors decide that he should go to hospital, so he must wait weeks or months before he got the Israeli permit. A lot of patients were died while they were waiting the Israeli permit, and a lot of times the Israel denied denied to allow to them to go to hospitals. So according to the United Nations also, Gaza is unlivable place with the 2020. The people in Gaza, in the common feeling, they thought that they should they should break the silence. They should end this situation of slow and silent death. This was the environment when I wrote a post on the beginning of 2008. I suggested on that post, why not we are, as Palestinians, we are dying under the Israeli blockade, and we are refugees. We have the normal right to return to our homes, even according to the United Nations Resolution 194. So why not we went near the fence and protest peacefully and send a strong message? We want to return to our homes. We want dignified life. We don't want much more our dignity and our human rights. And I suggested on that post the hashtag Great March of Return. The people in Gaza reacted strongly with this idea, I think because it touched their hearts, and it expressed what they are feeling. So tens, then hundreds of the activists reacted with this idea, and fastly this idea turned into a big mainstream in Gaza. The most of the factions, the NGOs, civil society, unions, youth, all of them decided to participate in this peaceful march. And then when the March 30, 2018 came, we saw tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 of the Palestinian refugees protest peacefully near the fence and said, we want our life, we want our freedom, and we don't forget our rights that Israel took it from us before 70 years ago, and we want to return to our homes. So this is how the Palestinians, I think the Great March of Return was an expression of the will of life, of the will of prevail among the Palestinians. Israel wanted, by the blockade and by the occupation, wanted to silence us, to remove the Palestinians, to give them a destiny is similar to the destiny of the native people in America. But the Palestinians, by this protest, they said, we are here, we are rooting in our land, and we are insisting to return to our homes and to get our rights.
So basically, from what you said, all of this, in your opinion, is being done by Israel intentionally, and it's planned for and has been planned for to lock the Palestinians, let's say 2.2 million, in this small square part of land. It has, like Israel has and is planning, and it has planned in the past to do what it's doing to the Palestinians. So with time, they can deprive them of water, food, medication. How is that so, in your opinion, that they want to do this intentionally and are doing this intentionally?
Yeah. Yes, Israel, from the first day in 1948, it established its state, its existence, based on the expulsion of the Palestinians and the occupation and settlement in their lands. So So since 1948 until now, just before a few weeks from now, some Israeli officials admitted that we deliberately pushed the Palestinians in Gaza to get out, and we are ready to facilitate their departure if they decide that they will never come back home. What does this mean when you speak about 2.2 million Palestinians in that? This means that the ethical cleansing process that Israel started on 1948 didn't end yet, and Israel until now work according to the basis more lands, less Palestinians. More lands, less Palestinians. So yeah, Israel never accepted any solution. Some of people asked me here in Europe, why not you accept the peace? I said to him, did Israel ever offer any peace process? Then we refused it. The PLO, since the Oslo Accords 1993 and before Madrid conference, more than 25 years. Then they were engaged in the negotiations with Israel. What's the result now? Give me a political achievement the Palestinians get it. Nothing. The Israel until now, after 25 years from the beginning of the negotiations between the Israeli government and the PLO, until now, Israel is still settling more lands in West Bank. The Israeli government said that it will about the annexation in West Bank. It will annex also the Jordan Valley. So no hope. Israel doesn't want to give the Palestinians anything. The only deal Israel accept it, that to see Palestine without any Palestinians, and to occupy all the lands, and to establish its Jewish statement without Palestinians. So it's sure ethnical cleansing. Israel practice it against the native residents in Palestine.
So do I understand that Israel, from the fact that they gave, let's say, what we call autonomy to Gazans, in a way gave it to them from one hand, but on the other hand they control everything about Gaza, the sea, the air, the land. So they gave the Palestinians or the Gazan, in a way, if we can call it autonomy, but on the other hand they control everything.
Yeah.
Is that can we say this is the reality of the matter, that Israel, if it wants to give autonomy to any Palestinians, where only Palestinians are living, it will always want to control the air, the sea, and the land?
Yeah. Israel claimed it withdrew from Gaza Strip in 2005. But the reality, Israel is still controlling everything, all the details related to the Palestinian, to the life of the Palestinians in Gaza Strip. Okay, if Israel withdrew from Gaza Strip, then why it still banned us in Gaza until now to build a seaport to be able to connect with the outside world? Why Israel until now ban us in Gaza Strip from rebuilding the only airport? It was destroying it by warplanes in 2001, just after 2 or 3 years from building it. Why Israel until now controlled the field of the gas and the coastline of Gaza? and banned the Palestinians from exploiting it and used it to improve their economy. Why Israel until now controlled all the materials can get can enter Gaza or left Gaza, and ban the machines from the entering Gaza for the Palestinians to be able to build their economy. Israel in the main three aggressions against Gaza Strip in 2008, then 2012, then 2014 destroyed more than 500 factories and facilities. It is the backbone of the Palestinian economy in Gaza Strip. What's the target in these factories and facilities? Why Israel destroyed it? Israel destroyed it because it wants for the people in Gaza to keep them without any factors of power, to keep them dependent on Israel and cannot make their independent economy or independent politics. So the reality, Israel is still until now occupied Gaza Strip.
Well, now that I listen to you speaking about it, you know, a lot of people say that Gaza is a big prison, and you know, I usually hear that, but I don't maybe feel or understand the real meaning of the word.
Yeah.
But if you, now that I started to think about it, if you control everything, the entrance, let's say the air, the sea, you're basically in a prison, because a prison, everything that goes in, goes out, is controlled by the people surrounding that place or managing that place. And with a high density, like you mentioned, one of the highly dense places in the world.
Yeah.
So it's just maybe, as they put it, a big prison where a big number of people are being locked in this place.
Yeah. Also, I would like to speak about the reality of the prison in Gaza. The moment, the poetical moment that I feel about the idea of the Great March of Return was when I went to near the fence between the Gaza Strip and between our villages and towns, which we were expelled out from there in 1948, and it's now Israel. I was there with my friend. Then my friend said to me, and you know, Gaza is very limited and very narrow place, so we went there to look at the space, to look at the horizon. So my friend said to me, Ahmed, look, this is the fence separated us from our home. So I said to him, really? It's just a few meters between us and our homes. Then I saw some birds move freely in the two sides of the fence. Then on that night I wrote on my Facebook profile, why not we be like the birds? The birds decide to fly, then they fly. The birds sound more clever than the politicians, because they don't admit these fences and walls. Why not we as Palestinians, as humans, why not we are deprived from the freedom of movement? What if I decided to walk, to wander in the nature? Why the Israeli bullet will put an end for my life? Just because I'm walking, just because I decide to move freely. This was the point. This is what was the point of the start of the idea. So, as example, the Palestinians when they the Palestinians in Gaza, the majority of them especially the youth generation, they never saw in the sky any plane, because we just saw in the sky the planes, the Israeli warplanes, which symbolized to the death and destruction. When we hear the voices of the warplanes, this means that just after a few minutes we will hear a bombing, and we will hear about more victims. Just on November 14, 2018, the Israeli warplane bombed a house of Sawarka family. They were sleeping, and they were civilians, and they went normally to sleep to their beds, and at the mid of night, an Israeli warplane bombed their home, and 9 of them, of the family, were killed, including 5 children. So when I traveled for the first time, it was in 2012. I traveled to Cairo. It was my first time to leave Gaza Strip, and I was 28 years old at that time. Then when I saw the planes landed to Cairo airport, then I was amazed with this scene. My Egyptian friend said to me it's a normal scene, but I said to him, to Gaza people and to Palestinian people, it's not a normal scene, because we don't see it inside Gaza. So I wrote in that time. So finally I discovered that the planes, the people, the humans can use the planes for other work. It's not just only for the death and for the destruction and for the flight. So the dream for the Palestinians in Gaza, it's very simple. It's just to see the world. I like the personally, and the majority of the Palestinians like me in Gaza, I want to travel not to arrive to a specific point or a specific place. I want to travel just to cross hundreds of kilometers without borders, without checkpoints. So when I went to the United States last year, then my friend, we were on the 10th floor. Then my friend said to me, Ahmed, look, this is Chicago. I said to him, what about the fence? Where is the fence? Because in Gaza, the people, because they are all their lives, they cannot imagine that the world is very wide and very big, and you can cross hundreds of kilometers without borders, without. When I came to Europe, then I moved from a country to another country, and I get out from the plane. Then no one asked me my passport. I feel it's strange. I think in my side to go to one of to the officer in the airport and ask him, can you see my passport? To feel that yes,
didn't do something wrong.
Yes. Unfortunately, when you put a group of people in unnormal reality, unnormal situation, then they think that this is the normal situation. We cannot imagine that you can move freely and no one asked you, no one stopped you, no one. So yes, it's horrible. I feel sad with the people in Gaza, the youth in Gaza. They never left Gaza Strip. They never left this prison. They never even to speak with a person from a different culture, from a different. When I went to the United States, one of the notes I recorded in my articles in Arabic, then I saw the people in the trains and on the activities. Then I wrote, so the people are very similar. They have the same hearts, the same soul, the same love, the same emotions. But when we were far, so we cannot feel our common humanity. So Israel commits a horrible crime against the Palestinians, not just by killing them by weapons and bullets, but it killed us. It kills the Palestinians when it stripped them from their humanity. When Israel put millions of Palestinians in Gaza Strip and in West Bank between the fences and the borders, so you cannot so it separates them from their human extension. So this means Israel plants the seeds of the hatred and the seeds of the violence and the seeds of the wars. Because if you want to make peace, you should allow for the people to meet each other, to speak each other, to be able to discover their common humanity and to feel emotions each other. Israel deprived the Palestinians from this basic human right to travel, to see the world, to leave these walls and fences.
Well, and with this march of return, we hear that until today, at least maybe 300 people who have been peacefully protesting. A lot of them journalists, a lot of them doctors. This is quite a big number of people for a short, let's say, relatively short period of time. How, in your opinion, the Israelis can commit such an act? I mean, these people are not carrying any weapons, they're not carrying any guns. Maybe in the worst case scenario, they'll pick a stone and throw it. But more than that, we don't know that they've done anything more than that. So shooting people who have, in the maximum case scenario, thrown a stone, when a lot have not. How do you think, I mean, the Israelis can commit an act like that? What makes a soldier actually pick up the gun and pull the trigger to get to that point?
Yeah. Unfortunately, Israel feels impunity. It feels that it's above the law. So it can break the human rights and the international law, and no one will account it. This encourages Israel to commit more and more of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Israel makes a lot of propaganda about the terrorism. They want to kill us. We are afraid, and like this. But now, what about the result? Now, after more than a year and 9 months from the beginning of the March of Return, Israel killed 300 or more than 300 unarmed protesters in Gaza, and killed and injured more than 30,000 of them. Hundreds of the injured people lost their legs because of the deliberate Israeli shooting against them. So on the other side, what about the Israeli losses in the Great March of Return? I think there are 2 or 3 soldiers were injured in a year and 9 months. So where is the danger? Where is the threat? Israel speaks a lot about it. So the Palestinians are victims. The Palestinians, they are the only victims in Palestine. Israel killed us First of all, when it committed a Nakba and forced us to leave our homes. Then it killed us when it came on 1967 and occupied the rest of Palestine, Gaza Strip and West Bank. And then it killed us by massacres, hundreds of massacres. Then it killed us by imposing the blockade against Gaza Strip. And by the way, the reality in the West Bank is not too much better. So it killed us by imposing the blockade and depriving the children, depriving the civilians from their basic necessities. Imagine when the child in Gaza, he cannot buy food in his school because his father cannot give him any money to for him, because not because of the nature, because of the Israeli deliberate policies against Gaza Strip. Then when we decided to say no, when we decided to knock the door, when we decided to make our voice heard across the world, Israel killed us again by live immunity, because by live bullets. So unfortunately the reality in Palestine is very clear. There is a state committed and is still committing crimes of war, crimes against humanity, and there are Western governments backed this government, back it politically and economically. So when as example, when the European Union said that the settlements are illegal, then we see the goods made in the settlements here in the markets of Europe. This means that this money, the money of the taxpayers, of the European taxpayers and the American taxpayers, will become bullets, will become fences, will become rockets. The Israelis killed more and more of the civilians against it. So how you describe the settlements that it's illegal, then allow for the goods made there to be sold here in the markets, in the European and the American and the other countries. The companies that support the Israeli military by building fences, by building weapons, that Israel breaks the international law. All these companies have its interests here in Europe and in the United States. So yes, the Palestinians are victims. They are victims of Israel first, and also they are victims for the international community's complicity with Israel. I think the world should choose one of two things: either to still supporting the Israeli violations, the Israeli breaking law politically and economically, or to choose to support its values, to support the human rights, and to say to Israel, to send a strong message to Israel: you are not above the law, and you should respect the international law, and you must implement the international law.
Do you think, well, generally speaking, Israel is the country that has, let's say, the power, the finance, the military it has the connections in the world, the lobbyists supporting it, that the powerful, in general, the powerful, they decide what they want to do because they are in the power position, whilst the Palestinians may have the right, but they don't have the power and the connections to do what the Israelis can do. Do you think this is one of the case scenarios where it's really unfair in the region, that Israel is the powerful one, it dictates, it decides, the Palestinians, although they have the rights, but not the connections and the power, can do only what they can do?
Yes, I think there are historic reasons for for supporting Israel from the countries and from the governments, the European and the American governments, because Israel represented, and it still represent, an extension for the colonialism, the European colonialism around the world. How Israel was established? Israel was established by the British helping, and Britain made everything, or make the structure of Israel then, and after that the Western governments is still support Israel until now by money and by its economy. Also, I think the European and the American government consider Israel as a part of them in the Middle East, so it can divide the Arab world, and it can
have influence.
Yes, it can meet with the interests of the international of the European and the American governments. So I think this is the moment that to reform this historic disaster, this historic mistake. The governments should make its allies with the peoples, not with the regime of apartheid, the regime of settlement, the regime of the expulsion, which Israel represents it. Yes, we as Palestinian people, why we struggle today? We struggle because we want the human rights, because we want our freedom. So I think it's illogical in the 21st century that the world allow and support a regime based on racial discrimination, based on expulsion and settlement like Israel. I think the world should correct this historic mistake and stop supporting the violations and breaking the human rights.
So basically, if I'm like thinking about it right now, the fact that the only thing that you can do to be locked, as you Gazans are locked in Gaza and living the way they are living, the only thing you can contribute to is to be born Gazan. This is if you're born Gazan, then you have this life. That's and this is something you don't choose. This is something probably that comes from above. So if you're born Gazan, you're basically entitled. You will have the life that you and a lot of Gazans are having. Basically, it is not your fault.
Yeah. Also, I think the disaster is not special for the Palestinians in Gaza only. Also, the Palestinians in West Bank, they are suffering. The Palestinian refugees in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Syria are still suffering. The Palestinians inside Israel are still suffering because of the racial laws. So I think yes, Gaza has its
limitations.
It's big part from suffering, but the root of the problem is the occupation itself, is the Israeli apartheid and the Israeli expulsion itself, and this what gives us motive to determine our struggle and what we want specifically. We want to collapse this regime, this unhuman regime, this unmoral regime. We struggle for equality for everyone. We struggle for dignity for everyone, regardless of who is he, what's his religion, what's his color. Now, what if now 2 or 3 millions of the Jews around the world said we want to go to Palestine, and they never stayed there before, and their parents never stayed there before? What Israel will say to them? Israel will say to them, welcome, and it will give them the nationality maybe in the airport. Why? Because they are Jews. By the same way, why not Israel allowed to us as Palestinian refugees? We were kicked out from our villages and towns to return back to our homes and live normally and live peacefully there. Why not? We deserve this more because the Jews in the United States or in Europe, he has his normal life and he has his full citizenship here. But the Palestinians in Gaza and the Palestinians in Lebanon and the Palestinians in Jordan are still suffering until now. Why not Israel don't allow to us? There is one reason. This only reason, that because we are not Jews. So this is how Israel is established itself. It established itself based on racism. Now when we hear about the apartheid in South Africa and the people were treated according to their colors, we said it's horrible. It was a horrible policy, but this horrible policy is still running until now in Palestine, because Israel treat with the people according to what was the religion of your father. If the religion of your father was Judaism, then you can have full citizenship and rights. But if you was an Arabic, if you was a Palestinian, then you don't have the same rights. So let us determine our problem. We don't have a problem with the Jewish people. Personally, I have a lot of Jewish friends, and I accept to live together with the Jews. My problem is the racism. My problem is to treat with the people according to things they didn't choose it. I can treat with you according to your free choice.
Who you are.
Yeah, your free choice, but I cannot. It's unfair to treat with you what's the society or what's the family you're born in. This is unfair.
Unfair, and maybe doesn't make sense in a lot of ways, especially like you said, maybe in the 21st century.
And this, excuse me, this makes Israel in contradiction with the values Europe and America speak about it, the values of the equality and the human rights. So we don't demand the European governments and the United States more than to support their values, their own values about equality and about human rights. It's unfair to treat with the people according to their race or their religion or their color.
Yeah, that's a very interesting and big question mark, like how the Europeans and the Americans who support democracy, sincere and authentic democracy, could accept something like that or support the state, in this case Israel, that gives preferentials to people of Jewish religion? That's really a question mark. Why is it so? It's a discrimination based on your religion strictly.
Yeah.
And in your opinion, Israel, in doing what it's doing nowadays, with all its connections, all its, let's say, power and might, you name it, isn't it in a way isolating itself? Israel isolating itself because, and living in a state of fear.
Yeah.
And living in a state of fear is not a good way to live, basically.
Yeah, sure.
So what do you say to that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think the real interest for Israel to end the nature of racism and the nature of separation and the nature of discrimination it lives with. I met tens of the Jewish people and in the United States. And I said to them, as Palestinian, I want for my people to end the occupation, to liberate themselves from the occupation, to get their freedom. In the same time, I want for the Jewish people to liberate themselves from the walls, from the fences, from the fear, from the hatred, from the racism. So yes, Israel is building, and it's still building walls and fences to separate Palestinians, but in the same time, those walls and fences separate Israel itself, because it make it live all their lives and the lives of the next generation inside fear, inside hatred, surrounded by enemies. So, do you accept, as a Jewish man, do you accept to stay in this walls of fear and for hatred for next generations, or we should struggle to end this? Reality. I think we can. Yes, it requires a lot of struggle and long and hard struggle, but yes, we can end this situation, and we can make a reality based on equality for everyone, based on equal human rights for everyone, and no one live with fear. Why Israel feels fear now? I understand Israel feels live in fears, but how this fear come? This fear come because of the history of them, because of the history of their crimes against the Palestinians. So Israel is worried that we as Palestinians will do with them the same thing they did with us. So when they committed crimes, when they make the fear, then they will pay the price. They will pay the price. So in this situation, and build your relations according to humanity, spread the peace, spread the justice, treat with the people with justice, then you will achieve the real security, the real safety, the real stability.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. The way I think, at least in how I see it, is Israel and Israelis are living in a state of fear that maybe a lot of it is self-created from, let's say, Palestinians who in reality probably don't have that power or effect to actually harm them. And they are paying the price maybe simultaneously or at the same time as the Palestinians. Maybe Palestinians definitely paying it in a harsher way because they're deprived of their freedoms, their basic human rights. but the Israelis are also, in a way, paying the price of an act that they are committing. Whether they are aware of it or not, that remains the question. And which brings me maybe to the next question. How do you think the change can come around for the region, let's say for the current, let's say Israel-Palestine, to achieve what you just mentioned, to achieve the human rights, equality for the Palestinians and the Israelis? Where do people need to start, to begin, to bring around the change inside and from outside?
I think that change will come when we believe that we can live together based on humanity, based on equality, based on justice for everyone. I think that change will start when we think that no one will end the other group. So the only choice we have to make a future better for our children. I'm sure no one either in Israel or in Palestine except for his child, for his son in the future, to stay live in hatred, in fear, in suffering. So let us end this horrible situation. Let us plant seeds of peace, of real peace, because the peace in the view of the Israeli governments is that the Palestinians surrender. But this is not the peace. The peace that you should accept the existence of the Palestinians as humans, as equal humans, and I should accept you as Jews, accept you as humans, not as colonialists. Yes, we can make the peace when we believe in this, when we make a struggle aims to create a new reality, a new society where everyone can live peacefully, safely, without walls, without fences, according to his humanity and according to his normal and equal rights.
What you said sounds really good, and I would probably agree with that. But on the ground, you think you are personally a person who have Jewish friends, is willing and probably also would like to live under the same roof in a country where it has both Palestinians and Israelis, both Jewish and Muslims and even Christians and other religions. But on the ground, since you come from Gaza and you live in Gaza, you think there is a will for the people in Gaza to live together with the Israelis? Let's say if that scenario does happen in the future, you think it is a reality that can become?
Yeah. To be honest with you, the majority of the Palestinians today doesn't carry these ideas. But I think we should go to the correct start for the problem. When you put a man, a human, inside a room, then deprived him from the food and the medicine, then and he feels that he under the suffering and he's close to death, then you cannot come and ask him about the peace. Mm-hmm. It's unfair. When you meet in Gaza, hundreds of mothers are still their sons in the Israeli prisons to liberate. They are in the jail since 10 or 20 or 30 years. Then you don't feel it's suitable to ask her about the peace. Mm-hmm. When you meet thousands of the people in Gaza, they cannot bring food and medicine for their children, then it's unfair and unlogical to come and ask this father. He is thinking all the day how he can provide few food for his children, to ask him about the peace. I think the first step to give the people hope. When you give the people hope, when you end the suffering of the people, and the suffering of the people is unnegotiable thing. It doesn't relate it with anything else. We should end the suffering of the people, because this is the duty of the humanity to make this. So I think when we change this hard conditions, when we change this inhumane reality, then the environment will allow for positive ideas to come. And I think initially, yes, we can make it. We can make it despite all the difficulties, because the generation of my father, as example, and even the people who are older than me 10 years, they were working inside Israel, and they were going every day and have jobs there. Yes, unfortunately, the relation wasn't built on the equality. Mm-hmm. But it was normal. It was possible to connect with Israeli employees and to speak with them, and so principally, yes, it's possible. It's possible. Then when the Intifada come, and when there were a lot of blood, a lot of victims, so it was difficult. But I think now the action is related to Israel and to the international community. Give the Palestinians hope in the suffering of the Palestinians. This is not, as I mentioned, it's not a negotiable thing. This is because they are humans suffering. So the first step, we should end their suffering. We should give them an acceptable human life. Then after that, we can create a positive environment to discuss and to make a real peace based on equality and based on justice.
So if Israel gives the Palestinian the rights and gives them a chance for life, to live their lives, and not have them under these sieges and blockades, then there is a chance that this reality can become a reality, where Palestinians and Jews and Israelis and Muslims can live in one country together, because at the end of the day, they have so much in common as humans that the differences or the made differences between them are usually very minor and shouldn't separate them the way it separates them today. More in common.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I think now the question not what's the Palestinian will do. The question now, what Israel must do and what the international community must do, because the Palestinians are victims, and you cannot demand the victim anything. As I mentioned before, when there is a prisoner inside a room without food, without water, then the only thing you can make it to end this suffering to him, and to break his isolation. Then after that, when he has his humanity, you can speak with him and you can agree. But it's unacceptable to ask the victims to introduce
to take the first step.
Yeah, and to give the solution. It's unfair and illogical. I think the Palestinians are victims. This is the reality. This is the fact. The Palestinians are victims, and the responsibility is on Israel to end this situation, to allow for the Palestinians to live normally, and this will help us to live normally and to make the real peace.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say for the people of the world who want to help the Palestinian cause and maybe to bring awareness to what's going on and what Israel is doing? What would you tell them and what would you ask of them?
Yeah, my message to the people that we cannot separate between the principles. Our struggle is one. When you believe, either you was in Europe, you was in America, you was in India, you was in Arab world, if you believe in justice and human rights and equality for everyone, then you should struggle to stop any violation anywhere, because any violation anywhere will harm will harm our values. So my message for the people who believe in these values, the values of equality and justice and freedom, that you are our partners as Palestinians struggle for freedom and struggle for equality. So our work today should be to make a big solidarity for the Palestinian people and make a strong lobby to make a pressure against Israel, to make a pressure about the governments, about the companies helped Israel and helped it to strengthen its occupation and its apartheid. So you are our partners. The silence around the world means more suffering, means more victims, means more Israeli feeling of impunity. So let us struggle together and let us make the voices of the victims heard for the politicians, for the representatives, for the governments. The victims died in Gaza Strip near the fence. They died because they want to send a message for the world. They want to say that we want our freedom. So they were died by the Israeli bullets. Now it's our duty as people who believe in the humanity of those protesters, of those people. This is our duty now to help them to achieve their moral goals, their human goals, and to make their voices heard in the governments. You should not allow to Israel to go on in its violations, in its breaking the international law. We should be strong by our belief that it's unacceptable to stay in a world allow for Israel to kill children, to kill civilians, to kill unarmed people, to steal more lands, to build a regime of apartheid and a regime of racism. This is one struggle. It's my struggle in Palestine, in Gaza. It's your struggle in Europe. It's your struggle in the United States. It's your struggle in anywhere if you believe in the human rights.
So you believe that everybody can have a role? If it's a small role, a big role, everybody can contribute.
Israel takes its power not from inside. It takes its power from the international support. So we should make a pressure against Israel to stop its violations, to stop its breaking for the international law from all the places where we can arrive to the governments and to the companies that support and fund the Israeli massacres and the Israeli violations against the humanity.
Thank you, Ahmed, for your time and for actually being here in Prague. It was an opportunity to meet with you and get your opinions on the situation.
Thank you. Thank you, Bassel.
Thank you very much.